The massive ships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system, like dark clouds blocking out the stars. 500 warships from 12 different alien species moved in perfect formation toward the small blue planet that humans called home. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their black holes gleamed with energy shields that could stop the blast from a star. Ambassador Zathrak stood on the bridge of the lead vessel. His forearms crossed behind his back as he watched Earth grow larger on the main screen. His species, the Keith Mari, had been part of the Galactic Council for over 2,000 years. They were tall, thin beings with gray skin and large black eyes that saw everything. Zathrak had delivered ultimatums to dozens of worlds. Most surrendered immediately when they saw the Council fleet. The smart ones did anyway. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human orbital station," reported his communications officer. "A squad Borvian with 6 eyes and thick blue skin." "Put them through," Zathrak said. His voice was calm and cold like winter wind. The screen flickered and showed a human female in a dark blue uniform. She had short gray hair and sharp green eyes that seemed to look right through him. Her face showed no fear, no surprise, nothing at all. This was Admiral Sarah Chen, the human representative to Alien Affairs. "Ambassador Zathrak," she said with a slight nod. "Welcome to Earth Solar System. Though I have to say, 500 ships seems like overkill for a diplomatic visit." Several of Zathrak's officers made angry sounds at the human's casual tone. No species had ever spoken to a council ambassador with such disrespect. Zathrak raised one of his 4 hands to silence them. "Admiral Chen," he replied, "this is no diplomatic visit. This is an official ultimatum from the Galactic Council. You and your species have violated numerous galactic laws. The time for diplomacy has ended." Chen leaned back in her chair and smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. "I see. Well, then why don't you come aboard our station and deliver this ultimatum properly? Unless the mighty Galactic Council is afraid of a few humans." More angry sounds from the bridge crew. Zathrak's black eyes narrowed. The human was either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both. "Very well," he said. "I will board your station in 1 hour. Be prepared to receive the Council's final judgment." The transmission ended. Zathrak turned to his tactical officer, a reptilian Sarian with scales that changed color with his emotions. Right now, those scales were deep red with anger. "Commander Vex, prepare a security detail." "Full battle armor and weapons, sir," Vex hissed. "Wouldn't it be simpler to just destroy their station and be done with it?" Zathrak considered this. The Galactic Council had rules about these things. They always offered surrender first. It was more civilized that way. "No, we follow protocol, but keep all weapons locked on their station. If the humans try anything foolish, destroy them immediately." 1 hour later, Zathrak materialized on the human orbital station with 20 heavily armed Council soldiers. The transport room was small and cramped compared to Council ships. Everything looked primitive and rough, like it had been built by hand instead of proper manufacturing systems. Admiral Chen was waiting for them with only 2 human soldiers as guards. They wore simple gray uniforms and carried weapons that looked like metal tubes with triggers. Primitive kinetic weapons that fired small metal bullets. Seth's personal shield could stop 1,000 such bullets without even warming up. "Ambassador," Chen said with another of those cold smiles. "Right on time. Please follow me to the conference room." They walked through narrow corridors lined with metal walls. Everything was functional and basic. No art, no decoration, just bare metal and harsh lights. It reminded Zathrak of military ships, not civilian stations. Strange for a species that claimed to be peaceful traders and explorers. The conference room was just as simple. A metal table with chairs around it. No windows, no displays showing the majesty of space. Just 4 walls and bright lights overhead. Chen sat down at one end of the table and gestured for Zathrak to sit at the other end. "Now then," she said, folding her hands on the table. "Let's hear this ultimatum." Zathrak activated a small device that projected a holographic display above the table. It showed star maps, legal documents, and images of human colonies. His voice took on the formal tone he used for all official business. "By the authority of the Galactic Council, representing 847 civilized worlds, Humanity stands accused of the following crimes against galactic law. The display showed images of human settlements on worlds that had been marked as protected. First, unauthorized terraforming of 17 worlds, designated as nature preserves. You have changed their atmospheres and brought non-native species to their surfaces. Chen nodded slightly, but said nothing. Second, aggressive expansion beyond your designated territory. Humanity was granted 47 systems for colonization. You now occupy 63 systems and show no signs of stopping. More images appeared showing human ships in space that was supposed to be neutral territory. Third, and most serious, the unauthorized uplifting of primitive species. You have given advanced technology and intelligence enhancement to at least 6 different species without council approval. This is strictly forbidden under galactic law. The display showed before and after images of the uplifted species, bear-like creatures that now walked upright and used tools, bird-like beings that had developed spaceflight, reptilian creatures that had built their own cities. These crimes cannot be ignored. Zethrock continued. The Galactic Council maintains peace through order. Your species threatens that order with your reckless behavior and aggressive nature. Chen listened to it all without changing expression. When the presentation ended, she spoke for the first time. So, what exactly are you demanding? The Throck touched his device again. A new document appeared in the air between them. Total and unconditional surrender. All human military forces will be disbanded. All human colonies will be placed under council oversight. All uplifted species will be returned to their primitive states or relocated to council worlds. Earth itself will be governed by a council administrator. He paused to let the words sink in. You have 72 standard hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, the council fleet will take action to enforce galactic law. This is not a negotiation. This is a final offer. Silence filled the room. Strock expected Chen to protest, to beg for more time, to ask for better terms. Instead, she just sat there, with that same slight smile on her face. Finally, she spoke. You know, Ambassador, I've been looking forward to this meeting for a long time. Looking forward to it? Strock was confused. You're about to lose everything your species has built. Your independence, your colonies, perhaps your lives. How can you look forward to that? Chen stood up slowly and walked to one of the metal walls. She pressed her hand against it, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a small window that looked out into space. Through it, they could see the massive council fleet spreading out around Earth like a net. Impressive ships, she said without turning around. Your technology is certainly advanced. Shields that can stop anything. Weapons that can crack planets. Faster than light travel that makes the universe seem small. She turned back to face him, and Strock saw something in her eyes that made him uncomfortable. It was not fear. It was not desperation. It was something else entirely. Tell me, Ambassador, what do you know about human history? Enough, Strock replied. Your species has been spacefaring for only 200 years. Before that, you were confined to a single world, fighting primitive wars with chemical explosives and metal weapons. That's right, Chen nodded. Only 200 years in space, a very short time compared to species like yours. But those primitive wars you mentioned, we've been fighting those for over 10,000 years. She walked back to the table, but did not sit down. Do you know what we learned in all those centuries of war, Ambassador? We learned that the best way to win a fight is to make sure your enemy doesn't see it coming. We learned that the strongest weapons are often the simplest ones. And we learned that sometimes the best defense is to let your enemy think they've already won. Somthrek felt a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong here. The human was too calm, too confident. No species had ever spoken to the council this way. Are you refusing our ultimatum? He asked. Chen's smile grew wider, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. But it was not a warm expression. It was the smile of a predator that had just spotted its prey. I'm not giving you an answer right now, she said. You gave us 72 hours, and we're going to use every minute of them. I suggest you use that time to reconsider your position. Reconsider? Zilthrak stood up, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of authority. We are the Galactic Council. We command 847 worlds. Our fleet could turn your planet to dust in minutes. What could we possibly need to reconsider? Chen walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of him. Despite being much smaller than the tall alien, she somehow seemed to tower over him. You could reconsider whether you really want to find out what humans are capable of when someone threatens our home. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The Throck's tactical officer moved his hand to his weapon, but Chen ignored him completely. Her green eyes were locked on Throck's black ones. You see, Ambassador, you've made a fundamental error in your calculations. You think we're afraid of you because we're young and small, but you've forgotten something important. And what is that? Every species you've conquered in the past was peaceful until you arrived. They had no experience with real war, real violence, real death. But we do. We've never been peaceful. We've never been tame. And we've been preparing for this day since the moment we first learned about the Galactic Council. Strock felt another chill. Preparing how? Chen's smile became something that would have made a shark proud. Wouldn't you like to know? She walked to the door of the conference room and opened it. Your 72 hours start now, Ambassador. I'll have my answer ready when the time is up. Until then, you and your fleet are welcome to wait right where you are. Seth and his guards filed out of the room, their weapons and armor suddenly feeling less protective than before. As they walked back to the transport room, the ambassador found himself thinking about the human's words. What had she meant about preparing? What could a primitive species like humanity possibly do against the might of the Galactic Council? As they materialized back on their ship, Zothri immediately ordered a full scan of the human station and all nearby space. The results showed exactly what he expected. A few small defense platforms, some patrol ships, and the station itself. Nothing that could threaten even one council ship, let alone 500. Sir, his communications officer reported. We're detecting increased transmission activity from the human station and their planet. What kind of transmissions? Unknown. They're using some kind of encryption we haven't seen before. Very sophisticated for such a primitive species. Strax stared at the image of Earth on his main screen. The small blue world looked so peaceful, so harmless. But Admiral Chen's words echoed in his mind. The confidence in her voice, the coldness in her eyes, that predatory smile. Continue monitoring all human communications, he ordered, and double our sensor sweeps. I want to know about every ship, every satellite, every piece of debris in this system. As his crew rushed to carry out his orders, Strock found himself wondering if perhaps the Council had underestimated humanity. But no, that was impossible. They had the numbers, the technology, the experience. What could one small species do against the combined might of 847 worlds? He would have his answer in 72 hours. But somehow he was no longer sure he wanted to know what it would be. Deep below the surface of Earth, in bunkers that had been built and hidden over decades, ancient machines hummed to life. Signals pulsed out into space, traveling faster than light to every corner of human territory. Old agreements were activated. Sleeping giants began to wake. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, things that had been waiting patiently for 50 years finally received the message they had been hoping for. The Council had made their move. Now it was humanity's turn. The Council fleet spread out around Earth's solar system like a vast net of death. Each ship took its assigned position, with military precision that had been perfected over thousands of years. The formation was designed to prevent any escape and to demonstrate overwhelming force to anyone watching from the planet below. Strock stood in his command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing every aspect of the human system. Red dots marked human settlements, space stations, and patrol ships. All of them were pathetically small compared to the Council fleet. The largest human ship he could see was barely the size of a Council escort frigate. Status report, he ordered. Commander Vex, his tactical officer, gestured to the main display. All ships are in position, sir. We have complete coverage of the system. No human vessel can leave without our permission. Our sensors show minimal defensive capabilities. What about their military response? Throck asked. Surely they must be mobilizing something. That's what's strange, sir, replied Lieutenant Gore, the intelligence officer. We're seeing almost no military activity at all. A few patrol ships have moved to different positions, but nothing that looks like preparation for battle. No evacuation of civilians. No emergency broadcast. No panic. Strzok frowned. This was not normal behavior for a species facing extinction. In his experience, most worlds either surrendered immediately or threw everything they had into a desperate last stand. But the humans seem to be doing neither. Perhaps they're simply in shock, suggested Commander Vex. When primitive species first see our true power, they sometimes become paralyzed with fear. Maybe, Strzok muttered, but he wasn't convinced. He remembered the cold confidence in Admiral Chen's eyes. That was not the look of someone paralyzed by fear. On the bridge of another council ship, Fleet Admiral Korvash studied the same data with growing satisfaction. The ancient Voron had commanded council fleets for over 3 centuries. His species looked like walking crystals, their bodies made of living mineral that reflected light in beautiful patterns. When Korvash was pleased, his body glowed with soft blue light. "Excellent positioning," he said to his staff. "The humans are completely surrounded. Even if they had a fleet hiding somewhere, they could not reach Earth in time to make a difference." "Sir," his sensor operator reported, "we're detecting some unusual energy readings from the planet's surface." "What kind of energy?" "Unknown, sir. It's very faint, coming from multiple locations underground. Could be industrial activity, or perhaps some kind of primitive defensive network." Korvash's crystalline body flickered with amusement. "Let them power up whatever weapons they have. Our shields can withstand the combined firepower of a dozen civilized fleets. What harm could primitive human weapons possibly do?" Meanwhile, deep in the Council intelligence ship, analysts worked frantically to decode the human transmissions that had been flooding space since the ultimatum was delivered. The ship was crewed entirely by Menturi, a species that looked like floating jellyfish, with enormous brains visible through their transparent bodies. Chief Analyst Quintel pulsed with frustration as another encryption proved impossible to crack. The Menturi were the most intelligent species in the galaxy, capable of solving mathematical problems that would take other species years to even understand. But these human codes were unlike anything they had ever encountered. "This makes no sense," Quintel transmitted to his colleagues through the telepathic link all men shared. "The encryption is incredibly sophisticated, far beyond what a species of their technology level should be able to create." "Perhaps they had help," suggested another analyst. "Maybe one of the uplifted species contributed to their communications technology." "No," Quintel replied. "The mathematical principles are definitely human in origin, but they're using concepts that our own mathematicians only discovered 50 years ago. How could a primitive species develop such advanced cryptography?" As the hours passed, more disturbing information began to surface. Long-range sensors detected unusual activity in human space, far beyond Earth's solar system. Ships were moving, but not in patterns that made sense for either evacuation or military mobilization. "Sir," the communications officer on Strzok's ship reported, "we're receiving diplomatic requests from several neutral species. They're asking about our intentions regarding human trade routes." "Trade routes?" Strzok was puzzled. "What does trade matter when we're about to destroy their civilization?" "That's just it, sir. According to these requests, humanity has extensive trade agreements with over 200 neutral worlds. If we disrupt their shipping, it could affect the economies of multiple sectors." This was unexpected. The Council's intelligence reports had portrayed humanity as a minor player in galactic commerce. How did they manage to establish such extensive trade networks in only 200 years? "Get me a detailed report on human economic activity," Strzok ordered. "I want to know exactly how deep their influence goes." While the Council fleet waited and watched, Admiral Chen stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform. Unlike the cramped conference room where she had met with Sithrock, this chamber was vast and filled with advanced technology that the Council had never seen. Holographic displays showed the positions of every Council ship, along with detailed technical specifications that should have been classified information. Other screens displayed star maps with millions of data points, trade routes spanning half the galaxy, and communication networks that stretched farther than any human ship had ever officially traveled. "Status report," Chen said to her staff. "All deep assets are in position and ready for activation," reported Colonel Martinez, her intelligence chief. "We have confirmation from sectors 7 through 43. The packages we delivered over the past 20 years are all operational." "What about our friends?" Shen asked. The Earth signs report ready for immediate deployment. The Avens have their scout networks activated across 12 sectors. The reptilians have completed their modifications to the targeting systems we provided. Chen nodded with satisfaction. The Council thought the uplifted species were primitive allies, barely above their original animal states. They had no idea what those species had really become, after decades of human guidance and technology transfer. And our special projects, Project Trojan Horse, is ready for activation on your command. All cargo vessels are in position. Project Mirror shows green across all parameters. Project Prometheus is standing by for final authorization. Chen smiled, that same cold smile she had shown Thrak. The Council believed they were dealing with a young, inexperienced species that had stumbled onto the galactic stage by accident. They had no idea that humanity's expansion into space had been carefully planned and executed with the precision of a military campaign. "Maintain current status," she ordered. "Let them think they're in control for a little while longer." Back on the Council flagship, Thrak was becoming increasingly disturbed by the intelligence reports flowing in. Human influence in the galaxy was far more extensive than anyone had realized. They had trade agreements with worlds the Council barely knew existed. Their ships had been spotted in sectors that were supposedly uninhabited. Most troubling of all, several species had politely but firmly requested that the Council reconsider its actions against humanity. "This doesn't make sense," he said to his assembled staff. "How could a species that's only been spacefaring for 200 years have this kind of reach?" "Perhaps our initial intelligence was flawed," suggested Commander Vex. "Maybe they've been in space longer than we thought." "No," Thrak replied. "We have solid evidence of their first contact with galactic civilization. They definitely achieved spaceflight only 2 centuries ago. But somehow in that short time, they've managed to establish a network that took most species millennia to build." Fleet Admiral Corvash was having similar thoughts on his command ship. His crystalline body flickered with uncertainty as he reviewed the data. "There's something we're missing," he said to his tactical officers. "No species builds this kind of influence network without a plan. What are the humans really up to?" "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we've intercepted some fragmentary communications that might be relevant. The humans seem to be using phrases like the long game and Phase 2 in their encrypted messages." "Phase 2 of what?" "Unknown, sir. But they're definitely coordinating something on a galactic scale." As the second day of the ultimatum period began, more troubling signs emerged. Council ships in other sectors reported unusual encounters with human vessels. Not attacks or provocations, just strange coincidences. Human cargo ships appeared in systems where Council fleets were conducting exercises. Human exploration vessels were discovered in regions that had been classified as empty space. Human traders seemed to be everywhere, always with perfectly legal explanations for their presence. "It's like they've been mapping our entire military structure," Thrak realized during a briefing with his senior staff. "Every time we move a fleet, they somehow have ships nearby to observe us." "But why?" asked Commander Vex. "What could they gain from that information?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Deep in the Council archives, an elderly Manuri librarian named Sothron made a discovery that chilled him to his floating core. While researching human contact history, he found records that had been classified and forgotten for decades. The files showed that humanity's first contact with galactic civilization had not been the peaceful meeting described in official reports. Instead, it had been a hostile encounter with Council forces that had ended with the destruction of a human exploration ship. The survivors had been interrogated and then released with their memories supposedly wiped. But the memory wipe had failed. The humans had learned about the Galactic Council 30 years before official first contact. They had spent those 3 decades preparing. Zaron immediately transmitted his findings to the fleet. But by the time the message reached Thrak, it was almost too late. "They've been planning this from the beginning," Thrak whispered as he read the archived files. "Every contact, every trade agreement, every exploration mission, it was all intelligence gathering." "Sir," his communications officer called out urgently, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Chen. She says she's ready to give us her answer." Seth looked at the countdown timer showing the remaining hours of the ultimatum period. There were still 18 hours left. Why was the human ready to respond early? "Put her through," he ordered. Admiral Chen appeared on the main screen, But she was no longer on the orbital station. The background showed what looked like a military command center, filled with displays and personnel. Her cold smile was wider than ever. "Ambassador Thrak," she said, "I hope you've had time to think about our conversation." "Admiral," Thrak replied carefully, "you still have 18 hours to consider our terms." "Oh, I've already considered them," Chen said. "And I have to say, they're quite generous. Total surrender, loss of our independence, subjugation of our allied species. Very kind of you to offer us slavery instead of immediate death. Those are the only terms available." Thrak said, "Your species cannot continue to threaten galactic stability." Chen's laugh was like ice-breaking. "Threaten stability. Ambassador, we are stability. Do you have any idea what happens to galactic commerce if you remove humanity from the equation? Commerce can be rebuilt, can it?" Chen touched something off-screen, and new displays appeared above Thrak's head. They showed economic data, trade routes, and shipping schedules that made his blood freeze. 47% of all cargo transportation in the outer rim sectors, Chen said casually. 63% of raw material extraction in the frontier zones. 81% of all trade between the galactic core and the expansion regions, all handled by human ships or human-affiliated companies. The displays showed more data. Banking networks, communication systems, shipping schedules, supply chains, all of it connected to humanity, in ways the Council had never realized. "You want to know what happens if you destroy us, Ambassador? Half the galaxy stops functioning. Food doesn't get delivered. Medicine doesn't reach hospitals. Raw materials don't make it to manufacturing centers. Entire sectors collapse into chaos." Thrak stared at the data in growing horror. How had they missed this? How had humanity managed to make themselves so essential to galactic civilization without anyone noticing? "But that's not the best part," Chen continued, her smile becoming truly terrifying. "The best part is what happens next. See, all those neutral worlds that depend on human trade, they're not going to just sit quietly while you destroy their economies. They're going to want answers. They're going to want compensation. And when they don't get it," she didn't need to finish the sentence. Seth understood. Destroying humanity wouldn't just remove one troublesome species, it would destabilize the entire galaxy. "This is extortion," he said. "No," Chen replied. "This is what we call a strategic position. We've spent 200 years making ourselves indispensable. Now you have to decide, is your pride worth destroying galactic civilization?" The transmission ended, leaving Thrak staring at empty space, while alarm bells rang in his mind. The humans had outplayed them completely. Every move the Council had made, every strategy they had planned, had been anticipated and countered before the game even began. "Sir," Commander Vex said quietly. "What are your orders?" Thrak looked at the countdown timer. 16 hours and 37 minutes remaining. But somehow, he suspected that the real countdown had started 50 years ago, and humanity had been the ones controlling it all along. The final hours of the ultimatum ticked away like a bomb, counting down to explosion. In the Council fleet, tension filled every ship as commanders tried to understand what they were really facing. The humans had revealed their economic stranglehold on the galaxy, but that was just information warfare. Admiral Chen's smug confidence suggested something far more dangerous was waiting. Thrak had called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. The holographic conference room aboard his flagship was filled with the greatest military minds the Galactic Council could offer. Representatives from 12 different species, each with centuries of combat experience, each looking uncertain for the first time in their careers. "The situation has become more complicated than we anticipated," Thrak began. "The humans have somehow positioned themselves as a critical component of galactic infrastructure. Destroying them could cause economic collapse across hundreds of worlds." Fleet Admiral Korvash's crystalline body flickered with angry red light. "Economic concerns should not dictate military strategy. The Council's authority cannot be challenged, regardless of the consequences. Easy words when your own worlds won't be the ones starving," muttered Commander Thex, a six-legged insectoid whose species relied heavily on human trade routes for food imports. "The Galactic Council has maintained peace for 3,000 years, declared Admiral Yoth, her tentacled form writhing with indignation. We cannot allow one upstart species to dictate terms to us. But we also cannot ignore reality, said General Brix, the most experienced ground combat specialist in the fleet. If the humans are telling the truth about their economic integration, attacking them could be more damaging to the galaxy than allowing them to continue their expansion. Strax studied the faces around the table. He could see doubt creeping in, exactly as Admiral Chen had intended. The humans were psychological warfare experts, turning the Council's own strengths against them. There's another factor to consider, he said reluctantly. Our intelligence suggests that the humans have been gathering information about our military capabilities for decades. They may know more about our ships and tactics than we know about theirs. Impossible, scoffed Commander Vex. Their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they have learned that would make a difference? As if summoned by his words, an urgent alert flashed across all their displays. The communications officer's voice crackled through the speakers with barely controlled panic. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Chen. She says the deadline has arrived and she's ready to give us her final answer. Sithrak checked his chronometer. There were still 3 hours left in the ultimatum period. Why was the human contacting them early again? Put her through. Admiral Chen appeared on the main display, but everything about her had changed. Gone was the simple military uniform. Now she wore what looked like advanced battle armor, sleek and black with energy patterns running across its surface. Behind her, the command center had transformed into something that belonged on a Council warship, filled with holographic displays and advanced technology. Greetings, Council leaders, she said with that same cold smile. I apologize for calling early, but I wanted to give you my answer while you still had time to make a graceful retreat. You still have 3 hours, Strax said, though his voice sounded less confident than before. Oh, I know exactly how much time I have, Chen replied. But you see, I've been thinking about our conversation, and I realized I never properly introduced myself. She stood up, and the camera pulled back to show her in full. The armor she wore was clearly advanced technology, but it didn't look like anything in the Council's databases. Energy patterns flowed across its surface like living light, and weapon systems that should have been impossible were integrated seamlessly into its design. I am Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding officer of the Terran Defense Force. But that's not my only title. I'm also a graduate of the Imperial War College, where I studied the military histories of over 2,000 species. I'm a specialist in xenopsychology, with particular expertise in predicting the behavior of militaristic societies, and I'm the architect of what we call the long game. The display behind her shifted to show star maps, but not the simple charts the Council was familiar with. These were incredibly detailed tactical maps showing fleet positions, supply lines, communication networks, and strategic resources across the entire galaxy. For 50 years, ever since we learned about the Galactic Council, humanity has been preparing for this moment. Not just preparing to defend ourselves, but preparing to win. Win? Fleet Admiral Corvash's voice carried a note of disbelief. You face the combined might of 847 worlds. Your entire species controls fewer systems than some of our member states own as vacation resorts. Chen's smile grew wider, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. But there was nothing warm about it. It was the smile of a predator that had been playing with its food and was finally ready to feed. You're thinking in terms of territory and ship counts, she said. That's your first mistake. We don't need to control territory to control the battlefield. We just need to control the variables that matter. She touched something on her armor, and the star maps changed. Suddenly, thousands of new markers appeared scattered throughout Council space. Red dots, blue triangles, yellow squares, each one labeled with coordinates and tactical information. Variable 1, intelligence. For 50 years, every human cargo ship, every trading vessel, every exploration craft has been gathering data about your military capabilities. We know the exact specifications of every ship class in your fleet. We know your standard tactical formations, your communication protocols, your supply chains, and your response times. The markers on the map began connecting with lines showing a vast network that spanned the galaxy. Variable 2, positioning. Those cargo ships weren't just gathering intelligence. They were placing assets, sensor networks, communication relays, supply caches, and other tools we might need. More lines appeared on the map, this time showing what looked like a military supply network that dwarfed anything the Council had ever seen. Variable 3. Allies. You think you forced us to uplift primitive species, but we didn't uplift them because we had to. We uplifted them because we chose partners who would complement our own abilities. The display showed images of the uplifted species, but they looked nothing like the primitive creatures in the Council's files. The Earth signs stood in powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. The aliens flew spacecraft that moved like living things through space. The reptilians worked with technology that seemed to blend seamlessly with their natural abilities. You see, we learned something important from studying your history, Chen continued. Every species you conquered was peaceful until you arrived. They had no experience with real warfare, no understanding of strategic thinking, no knowledge of how to fight for survival. But we've never been peaceful. We've been warriors since before we discovered fire. Commander Vex leaned forward, his scales shifting to deep red. Are you threatening us? Threatening? Chen laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. Oh no, Commander. I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining to you what's about to happen. She gestured, and the star maps disappeared, replaced by technical displays showing Council ships in real time. But something was wrong with the images. Energy signatures were fluctuating. Shield systems were showing irregular patterns, and weapon systems appeared to be cycling randomly. You see, there's one more variable you never considered. All that trade we've been doing with you for 50 years. All those cargo deliveries, technical exchanges, and maintenance contracts. We weren't just gathering intelligence. We were making modifications. The blood drained from Sthrok's face as he realized what he was seeing. What have you done to our ships? Oh, nothing dramatic, Chen said casually. Just small improvements to your systems, better cooling for your reactors, more efficient power distribution, upgraded software for your navigation computers, all completely beneficial modifications that your engineers were happy to install. The displays showed more technical data, and Sthrok's worst fears were confirmed. Every ship in the Council fleet was showing the same irregularities. Of course, those improvements came with a few extra features that we didn't mention. Remote access protocols, system overrides, automatic shutdown commands, just in case we ever needed to do some emergency maintenance. Fleet Admiral Korvash's crystalline body flared with brilliant red light. You're saying you can control our ships? Control is such a harsh word, Chen replied. Let's just say we have administrative access. For example, she touched her armor again, and suddenly alarms began blaring throughout the Council fleet. On Zethrek's ship, half the weapon systems went offline. On Korvash's vessel, the shields flickered and died. Across the entire fleet, ships began reporting system failures and power fluctuations. Don't worry, Chen said, as chaos erupted around the Council commanders. This is just a demonstration. I could shut down your entire fleet permanently if I wanted to, but that would be unsporting. The system failures stopped as quickly as they had begun, but the message was clear. The mighty Galactic Council fleet was completely at humanity's mercy. Now then, Chen continued, let me give you our counter-proposal. You're going to turn your ships around and leave our solar system. You're going to return to the Council chambers and explain that humanity has been accepted as a full member of the galactic community, with all the rights and privileges that entails. That's impossible, Zatharak protested. The Council will never accept such terms. Oh, I think they will, Chen said. You see, while we've been talking, similar demonstrations have been taking place throughout Council space. Every major fleet base, every critical facility, every important world has just learned that their systems are not as secure as they thought. The display showed images from across the galaxy. Council military bases with their defenses offline, government buildings with their communication systems compromised, industrial facilities with their production lines stopped. Everywhere the same message was being delivered. Humanity had been inside their systems for decades. We call it the Prometheus Protocol, Chen explained, named after the human myth about stealing fire from the gods. Except in this case, we didn't steal your fire. We've been patiently building our own, and now we're ready to use it. Admiral Youth's tentacles writhed with fury. This is an act of war. No, Chen corrected. This is an act of survival. You came here to destroy us. We're simply showing you why that's not possible. You have two choices now. Accept us as equals, or learn what happens when humans stop playing nice. And if we refuse? Sethrak asked. Chen's smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of cold calculation that made the room temperature seem to drop. Then you'll discover why every species in human space calls us the Deathworlders. You'll learn why our uplifted allies chose to fight beside us instead of against us. And you'll understand why sometimes the best way to ensure peace is to be too dangerous to attack. She leaned forward, and her green eyes seemed to look directly into each council commander's soul. Make no mistake, gentlemen. We've been preparing for this war for 50 years. We know your capabilities, your weaknesses, your psychology, and your fears. We have assets positioned throughout your territory, allies ready to fight at our command and technology you've never seen before. If you force us to fight, we won't just defend ourselves. We'll end the Galactic Council as a political entity and rebuild the galaxy according to our own design. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in 3,000 years, the representatives of the Galactic Council were faced with an opponent who was not only unafraid of them, but actively eager for the confrontation. So, Chen said, settling back in her chair with that terrible smile returning, what's it going to be? Peace, or the education of your lives? The transmission ended, leaving the council commanders staring at empty space, while the weight of their situation settled over them like a burial shroud. They had come to Earth expecting to crush a minor rebellion. Instead, they had walked into a trap that had been 50 years in the making. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the real human fleet was moving into position, ready to show the galaxy what happened when someone threatened the death world called Earth. Share. Fleet Admiral Corvash's crystalline body burned with rage as he cut the connection to the human command center. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to assess the damage from Chen's demonstration. System reports flooded in from across the fleet, all carrying the same terrifying message. Their ships were compromised. Status report, he barked. Sir, his chief engineer reported. We've identified the source of the system intrusions. The modifications the humans made to our ships included hidden subroutines in our core systems. They have backdoor access to everything: weapons, shields, life support, even our self-destruct sequences. Can we remove them? Not without completely rebuilding every system from scratch. It would take months, maybe years. And sir, the engineer's voice dropped to a whisper, they're not just in our ships. The same intrusions are present in our space stations, our planetary defense networks, even our communication systems back home. Corvash felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of military service. Genuine fear. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them tactically. They had systematically compromised the entire infrastructure of galactic civilization. On the flagship, Sthrak was having an emergency conference with the other council ambassadors via quantum communication. The holographic forms of his colleagues flickered with interference. Another sign that human modifications were affecting even their most secure systems. This is a disaster beyond anything we could have imagined, admitted Councillor Bash, the ancient leader of the council's governing body. If the humans can control our military assets at will, our authority is meaningless, and we have to attack now, before they can solidify their advantage, urged Councillor D, his militant faction always ready for violence. Even compromised, we still have superior numbers and firepower, and risk them shutting down our entire fleet in the middle of battle. Sithrak replied. They could disable our weapons and leave us floating helplessly while they pick us apart at leisure. Then what do you suggest? Vash asked. We cannot simply surrender to these upstarts. Before Zithrak could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the fleet. The tactical displays lit up with new contacts appearing at the edge of the solar system. Ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel, but they weren't council vessels. Report, Corvash demanded. Sir, we're detecting multiple fleet formations entering the system. Initial count shows this can't be right. What is it, sir? We're reading over 2,000 ships of unknown configuration. They're not broadcasting council identification codes. The main display flickered and resolved into a tactical overview that made every council officer's blood freeze. Surrounding their fleet was a massive formation of vessels unlike anything in their databases. The ships were sleek and angular, covered in what looked like adaptive armor that shifted color and pattern like living skin. Their energy signatures were completely alien, showing power levels that rivaled Council dreadnoughts despite being much smaller. Unknown vessels. Corvash transmitted on all frequencies. Identify yourselves immediately. The response came not from the ships, but from Admiral Chen, whose image appeared once again on their screens. She was no longer alone, flanked by figures in similar advanced armor, but with clear physiological differences. Tall, bear-like beings stood to her left. Graceful bird-like creatures perched to her right. Reptilian forms with glowing eyes filled the background. Fleet Admiral Corvash, Chen said with that same cold smile. Allow me to introduce the true scope of human space. What you're seeing are the combined fleets of the Terran Alliance, humanity and our allied species working together as equals. The display split to show close-ups of the alien ships. They were clearly not human in design, but they carried human weapons and bore human tactical markings. More disturbing still, they moved with a coordination that spoke of shared tactical doctrine and integrated command structures. Impossible, breathed Commander Vex. Our intelligence showed that the uplifted species were barely above their primitive states. Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see, replied one of the bear-like beings, its voice a deep rumble that carried unmistakable authority. I am War Chief Thaknith of the Ursine Defense Corps. My people have been working with the humans for 30 years, building ships and training warriors for this day. Another voice joined in, this one musical and fluid, like wind through trees. I am Flight Leader Zaire of the Avenance Fleet. While you watched our public colonies, we were establishing hidden bases throughout the Outer Rim. Every empty system your scouts checked was actually under our observation. A third voice, sibilant and measured, came from one of the reptilian figures. I am Techmaster Saren of the Saurian Engineering Corps. We have been improving human technology and developing new weapons, specifically designed to counter Council defenses. Chen stepped forward, and her armor's energy patterns intensified. You see, when we uplifted our allies, we didn't impose our culture on them. We learned from theirs. The Earth signs taught us about pack warfare and unbreakable loyalty. The Aven showed us three-dimensional tactical thinking and perfect reconnaissance. The Saurians shared their knowledge of advanced engineering and adaptive technology. The tactical display updated to show the true formation surrounding the Council fleet. It wasn't just a random collection of ships. It was a perfectly coordinated battle formation that took advantage of each species' natural strengths. Ursine heavy cruisers formed an iron wall of firepower. Aven scouts darted between positions like a school of deadly fish. Zorian support vessels flickered in and out of sensor range, their adaptive hulls making them nearly invisible. This is still only a fraction of our true strength, Chen continued. Did you really think we would gather our entire fleet in one system? While you've been focused on Earth, our main battle groups have been moving into position throughout Council space. New tactical data appeared on the displays, showing similar fleet formations near major Council worlds and military bases. The scope of the operation was staggering. Humanity and its allies had somehow managed to position forces throughout the galaxy without being detected. How? Strak asked weakly. How did you hide so many ships for so long? Trade routes, Jen replied simply. For 50 years, human cargo vessels have been moving through Council space with complete freedom. What your customs inspector saw is merchant ships were actually military transports carrying disassembled warships and prefabricated base components. Every trading post we established, every mining operation we opened, every diplomatic mission we sent, all of it was cover for the largest military buildup in galactic history. Techmaster Sauron's reptilian form shifted color to a pleased blue-green. Our adaptive stealth technology allowed us to construct hidden bases inside asteroid fields and nebulae. Some of our facilities are less than a light year from major Council worlds completely undetected. But the logistics alone, Admiral Yeath protested. The coordination required the resources needed. You're thinking like a traditional military force, War Chief Thaknith rumbled. Humans taught us to think like entrepreneurs. Every operation had to be profitable. Every base had to pay for itself through legitimate business. We built a military-industrial complex disguised as a trade network. The scale of the deception was becoming clear. Humanity hadn't just been preparing for war, they had been waging economic warfare for decades, using their apparent weakness as a cover for the most sophisticated intelligence operation in galactic history. "This is your last chance," Chen said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "You can order your fleet to stand down and withdraw, or you can find out what happens when the galaxy's most successful predator species decides to stop hiding." Fleet Admiral Corvos looked at the tactical displays showing his fleet, surrounded by forces that outnumbered them 4-1. His crystalline body flickered with uncertainty as he tried to find a way out of the trap. "Even if we withdraw," he said finally, "the Council will never accept this situation. They'll gather every available ship and return in force." "Will they?" Chen asked. "Your economy depends on the trade routes we control. Your communication networks run through systems we've infiltrated. Your military infrastructure includes components we've modified. How exactly do you plan to fight a war when we control the supply chains?" She gestured, and the displays showed the true extent of human economic penetration into Council space. Food distribution networks, medical supply chains, raw material extraction, manufacturing systems, all of it flowed through human-controlled intermediaries. "You could try to build new infrastructure, Flight Leader," Zaire added in her musical voice, "but that would take decades, and we'd be watching every step of the process. Meanwhile, your worlds would be dealing with shortages, economic collapse, and social unrest." Or Chen said, "You could accept the new reality. Humanity and our allies aren't going anywhere. We're part of the galactic community now. Whether you like it or not, the question is whether we integrate peacefully or whether we have to restructure the entire system by force." A new voice cut across the communication channels, one that made every council officer snap to attention. It was Councillor Vash himself, the supreme leader of the Galactic Council, speaking directly from the council chambers. Admiral Chen, his ancient voice carried the weight of 3 millennia of authority. "You have made your point. But surely you understand that we cannot simply abandon our principles. The Council maintains order through strength and hierarchy. If we accept your terms, what message does that send to other ambitious species?" Chen's smile became razor-sharp. "It sends the message that the old order is ending. Counselor, the galaxy is changing, and you can either change with it or be left behind. And if we choose to fight, then you'll learn why humans have a saying: if you want peace, prepare for war. We've been preparing for 50 years, Counselor. Have you?" The transmission ended with that challenge hanging in the void between the two fleets. Around Earth's solar system, thousands of ships faced each other in the most dangerous standoff in galactic history. But the real battle wasn't between weapons and shields. It was between two completely different philosophies of power. The Council believed in dominance through superior force and ancient authority. Humanity believed in victory through superior preparation and adaptive thinking. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the outcome of that philosophical conflict would determine the future of galactic civilization. The war that was about to begin wouldn't just reshape the balance of power. It would redefine what power meant in a galaxy where the hunters had finally revealed themselves to their prey. The silence stretched across space like a held breath. 2 massive fleets faced each other in Earth's solar system. Weapons powered but not yet firing. Shields active but not yet tested. The moment balanced on a knife's edge with the future of galactic civilization hanging in the balance. Councillor Vash's voice finally broke the silence, transmitted from the council chambers light years away. His words carried the weight of 3,000 years of unquestioned authority. "Admiral Chen, you have demonstrated impressive capabilities, but you must understand the Galactic Council cannot appear weak. If we simply accept your demands, it will encourage every ambitious species in the galaxy to challenge our authority." Admiral Chen stood motionless in her command center, surrounded by holographic displays, showing the positions of every ship in both fleets. Her allied commanders, Ursine, Avon, and Saurian, waited for her response. The moment had finally arrived that humanity had been preparing for, since their first glimpse of the galactic community. "Counselor," she said quietly, "you're still thinking in terms of the old paradigm. You believe authority comes from the ability to destroy those who oppose you, but that only works when your opponents have something to lose that you can threaten." She gestured to the tactical displays. "What exactly are you going to threaten us with?" "Our trade networks. We built them to be redundant and adaptable. Our colonies, they're self-sufficient and heavily defended. Our allies, they chose to stand with us, knowing the risks. Fleet Admiral Corvash interrupted the transmission. Enough talk. We are the Galactic Council. We do not negotiate with primitives. His crystalline body flared with brilliant light as he gave the order his warriors had been waiting for. All ships, open fire. Destroy the human fleet. The Council fleet erupted with the fury of 1,000 suns. Energy beams lanced across space. Plasma torpedoes streaked toward their targets. And exotic weapons that could shatter asteroids focused their power on the human formation. For a moment, it looked like the technological superiority of the Council would carry the day. Their weapons were more advanced, their ships were larger, and their experience in space warfare spanned millennia. But then, Admiral Chen smiled that cold, predatory smile one final time. Fire, she said simply. What happened next redefined warfare for an entire galaxy. The human ships didn't respond with traditional weapons. Instead, they unleashed technologies that the Council had never seen before. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of the speed of light punched through energy shields as if they didn't exist. Directed energy weapons using principles that made Council physicists question their understanding of reality, carved through armor that should have been impregnable. But the real shock came from the Allied ships. The Earth vessels opened up with weapons that seemed to bend space itself, creating gravity wells that crushed Council ships like empty cans. The Avan fleet darted through the battle with impossible maneuverability, their weapons firing from angles that should have been physically impossible. The Saurian ships flickered in and out of visibility, their adaptive technology making them nearly impossible to target, while they struck with surgical precision. Impossible, gasped Commander Vex, as his tactical displays showed Council ships being destroyed faster than he could track. Their weapons shouldn't be able to penetrate our shields. They're not using energy-based weapons, reported his science officer, his voice tight with disbelief. They're using some kind of exotic matter manipulation. Our shields are designed to deflect energy, not solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. On the Council flagship, alarms screamed as system after system reported damage or complete failure. But the most disturbing reports weren't coming from the battle itself. They were coming from Council space throughout the galaxy. Sir, the communications officer called out in panic. We're receiving distress calls from the Vorin home fleet. They report being under attack by unknown forces. The Menturi Collective is requesting immediate assistance, added another officer. Their orbital defense platforms have been disabled. The Borvian industrial sector, the Kaimari trade routes, the Sarian research stations. The reports kept coming, each one describing the same scenario. Simultaneous attacks by forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. Admiral Chen's voice cut across the chaos of battle. Did you really think this was just about one fleet, Admiral Corvash? We told you we'd been preparing for 50 years. Did you imagine we'd concentrate all our forces in one system? The tactical displays updated to show the true scope of the human offensive. Throughout Council space, hidden fleets were emerging from concealment to strike at military targets, communication hubs, and strategic resources. But these weren't random attacks. They were precisely coordinated strikes, designed to the Council's ability to maintain control over their territory. You're witnessing the end of the old galactic order, Chen continued, as her ship systematically dismantled the Council fleet around Earth. For 3,000 years, you've maintained peace through fear. You've kept species in line by threatening to destroy anyone who challenged you. But what happens when someone challenges you who isn't afraid to die? A Council dreadnought, one of the most powerful warships ever built, exploded in a brilliant flash as Ursen gravity weapons collapsed its hull into a sphere of compressed metal and ceramic. The sight sent shockwaves through the remaining Council forces. We're not afraid to die. War Chief Thaknanth's voice rumbled across the communication channels. My people have been warriors for 1,000,000 years. Death in battle is an honor, not a fear. And we're not afraid to adapt, added Flight Leader Zephyr, as her scouts performed impossible maneuvers around Council interceptors. My people have survived by being smarter and faster than our predators. Your ships are just bigger predators, and we're not afraid to evolve. Techmaster Saren hissed, as his engineering crews performed real-time modifications to their weapon systems. My people have always improved our tools to match our prey. You are simply the latest challenge. But the most chilling voice belonged to Admiral Chen herself. And we humans aren't afraid of anything at all. We come from a world that tried to kill us for 1,000,000 years. Everything on Earth was bigger, stronger, faster, or more poisonous than us. We survived by being more cunning, more vicious, and more determined than anything else on our planet. The battle was turning into a rout. The Council fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming just hours before, was being systematically destroyed by forces that fought with the coordination and ruthlessness that shocked even veteran military commanders. "This is madness," Fleet Admiral Corvash transmitted, as his own ship shuddered under the impact of human weapons. "You're destroying the foundation of galactic civilization." "No," Chen replied as another Council ship died in nuclear fire. "We're replacing it with something better. Your civilization was built on the subjugation of the weak by the strong. Ours will be built on cooperation between equals." "Equals?" Corvash's crystalline form flared with desperate fury. "You think these primitive species are our equals?" "I think," said War Chief Thaknith, as his ships closed in on the Council flagship, "that anyone willing to stand and fight for their freedom has already proven their worth." The end came swiftly after that. Faced with total destruction, the surviving Council ships began to surrender. One by one, proud warships that had enforced galactic law for centuries powered down their weapons and submitted to human boarding parties. Fleet Admiral Corvash was among the last to surrender, his crystalline body dim with defeat, as human marines in advanced armor took control of his bridge. Admiral Chen herself came aboard to accept his formal capitulation. "This isn't over," he said as he handed over his command codes. "The Council has thousands of ships throughout the galaxy. They'll regroup and return in force." "Will they?" Jen asked, her cold smile never wavering. "Let me show you something." She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of Council space. Red indicators marked damaged or destroyed facilities. Yellow showed systems under human control. Green indicated worlds that had declared neutrality. And blue showed something that made Corvash's spirit break completely. Those blue markers represent Council worlds that have officially requested protection from the Terran Alliance, Chen explained. "It seems that when given a choice between the old system and the new one, most species prefer freedom to subjugation." The display showed dozens of worlds switching sides, their leaders making carefully worded announcements about joining a new galactic community based on cooperation rather than domination. The economic warfare that humanity had been waging for decades was finally paying off. Worlds that depended on human trade were choosing to side with their trading partners rather than their former masters. "But it's not just about economics," Chen continued. "For the first time in galactic history, species are being offered genuine equality. The same deal we gave our uplifted allies. Partnership, not servitude." 6 months later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the reformed Galactic Assembly in what had once been the Council chambers. The Great Hall had been redesigned to reflect the new order. Instead of a central throne, surrounded by supplicant seats, there was now a circular arrangement where every species sat as equals. Representatives from over 400 worlds filled the chamber. But the composition was radically different from the old Council, where once 12 dominant species had ruled over hundreds of subject races. Now every world had an equal voice in galactic affairs. "The Age of Empires is ending," Chen said in her address to the Assembly. "The age of cooperation is beginning. We've proven that strength doesn't come from the ability to dominate others, but from the willingness to stand together against those who would dominate us." In the audience, the former leaders of the Galactic Council sat in designated seats. They were not prisoners. Humanity had been surprisingly generous in victory, but they were no longer the unquestioned rulers they had once been. Councillor Vash looked ancient and tired. His 3,000-year reign finally ended. "Some of you may wonder why we fought so hard for this," Chen continued. "Why we spent 50 years preparing for a war that could have destroyed us all. The answer is simple. We refused to kneel." She paused, looking out at the assembled representatives of hundreds of worlds. "Every species in this room has something unique to offer. The Menturi have unparalleled intelligence. The Vorthans have mastered energy manipulation. The Borvians are the finest engineers in the galaxy. But for too long, these gifts were suppressed under a system that valued conformity over innovation. No more. In the reformed Galactic Assembly, every species will be free to pursue their own destiny while contributing to the common good. Trade will be based on mutual benefit, not exploitation. Technology will be shared, not hoarded. And conflicts will be resolved through negotiation, not conquest. She smiled. And for the first time in months, it was a warm expression instead of a cold one. We told the old council that they should have reconsidered their position. Now we're offering that same chance to everyone. Join us in building something better than what came before. Help us create a galaxy where strength protects the weak instead of preying on them. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Species after species stood to pledge their support for the new order, many of them speaking freely for the first time in centuries. But it was War Chief Thaknith who provided the most moving moment of the ceremony. The massive Ursine leader approached the podium with slow, dignified steps that emphasized his natural authority. For 30 years, he rumbled in his deep voice. Humans have been our partners and teachers. They showed us that strength without wisdom is tyranny, and wisdom without strength is helplessness. Today we stand together not as uplifted species and their benefactors, but as equals who chose to face the galaxy united. He turned to look directly at the former council leaders. You came to Earth demanding surrender. You received defiance. You threatened destruction. You received education. You expected fear. You discovered that some things in this galaxy are too dangerous to threaten. Flight Leader Zir took the podium next, her musical voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. My people have a saying, the wind that bends the tree does not break it. For 3,000 years, your council was a storm that broke many trees. But humans taught us to be the wind instead, to adapt, to flow around obstacles, to find the cracks in the strongest armor. Finally, Techmaster Sauron approached, his reptilian form shifting to colors that indicated deep satisfaction. Evolution never stops, he hissed in his sibilant voice. The strong prey on the weak until the weak become stronger. The hunters become the hunted until the hunted become the hunters. Today we see the next step in galactic evolution, the birth of a civilization based on cooperation instead of predation. As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Chen found herself standing on a balcony overlooking the capital city of what had once been the Council's homeworld. The skyline was already changing, as new architecture reflected the more open and egalitarian values of the Reformed Assembly. Colonel Martinez joined her, carrying a datapad with the latest reports from across the galaxy. Status report? She asked. Better than we dared hope, he replied. The transition is proceeding smoothly in most sectors. A few hardliner worlds are still resisting, but they're isolated and losing support daily. The economic integration we spent 50 years building is paying off. It's easier to join the new order than to fight it. Any word from the old council leadership? Councillor Vash has formally dissolved the Galactic Council and recommended that all member worlds consider joining the Reformed Assembly. He says he's tired of ruling and wants to spend his remaining years studying human philosophy. Chen chuckled. I almost feel sorry for him. 3,000 years of unquestioned authority ended by a species that refused to know their place. Ma'am, Martinez said quietly, do you think we did the right thing? All those ships we destroyed, all those lives lost. Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Finally, she spoke. Colonel, my grandfather fought in the last great war on Earth. He used to tell me that the price of peace is eternal vigilance. But I think he was only half right. The price of peace isn't just watching for threats. It's being willing to become a threat to those who would destroy peace. She turned to face him, and her expression was serious, but not cold. We didn't start this fight, but we finished it. And now, for the first time in galactic history, every species has the chance to reach their full potential, without fear of being crushed by those who came before them. In the distance, ships were taking off from the spaceport. Human vessels, Ursine heavy transports, alien scouts, and Saurian research ships, all working together to build the infrastructure of the new galactic order. Besides, Chen added with a slight smile, Someone had to teach the galaxy that humans don't surrender ever. Years later, historians would mark this day as the beginning of the Second Galactic Age, an era of unprecedented cooperation, technological advancement, and cultural exchange. The old council's rigid hierarchy was replaced by a dynamic network of partnerships that allowed each species to pursue their strengths while contributing to the common good. But for the children playing in parks on a 100 worlds, watched over by the distinctive silhouettes of human warships in the sky above, the lesson was simpler. Behind every peaceful moment stood those who were willing to fight for it. And in the depths of space, on ships bearing the flag of the Terran Alliance, Admiral Chen's final message to the galaxy was displayed on every communication screen. "We told you to reconsider. You should have listened."